as Coachella became Bernchella. That's right, Bernie Sanders taking the Coachella stage to rant and rave about President Trump and billionaire oligarchs to a crowd of kids who paid at least $600 to be there. Feel the burn, and AOC also bringing their socialist message to LA and Utah.
Now we got a president of the United States who... I agree. The future of what happens to America is dependent upon your generation. We're gonna sing and dance our way to victory against hatred and divisiveness.
An extreme concentration of power, greed, and corruption is taking over this country like never before.
We believe in democracy. We are not going to let Trump take us into an authoritarian society.
All right, so Tyrus, I did not see Bernie going to Coachella.
Why not?
Why not?
So by the way, I hate to disagree with you. That's a disagreement between you and me. Sorry, I'm keeping a list.
What do we have?
The $600 was the cheap seats.
That was the cheap seats.
Those are the cheap seats. If you want to sit up close, I believe it was a little more, almost $1,100. I think it's amazing that a socialist has a speaking fee, by the way. I wonder how much of that money went to the good people of Sanders, probably to help build his mansion. This is laughable. When you are speaking about a wrong, you shouldn't have to look down at a piece of paper.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you are speaking about injustice,
Yep.
I need to, and that's all you need to see, is that they are just saying things with no actual facts behind it. It's not a battle for Gen Z. It's common sense versus BS, and that's BS. Bernie Sanders goes out there and tells a bunch of people who can afford to be there how bad their lives are. But every one of them can afford $20 lemonades, $30 cheeseburgers, and continue to cheer and have. That's a rough life. Those guys were hurting. And then you know what the worst part of that night was? The long line of valet. Unbelievable that they had to wait up to 20 to 45 minutes for their valet. Times are tough for them right now in America, where guys, President Trump has capitalized on my favorite thing in the world, common sense. And when you have common sense, it brings everybody together. Why? It's common sense.
These crowds that they're getting, Dana, are these the same crowds Bernie's always gotten for the last 20 years? Are these new people?
Well, some of them are younger than the crowds you used to get, but it's the same type, right? So there's always been fringes, left and right. Bernie Sanders probably always could have gotten these crowds. He has a following, might be a little bit more than usual because they've got a big promoter and they've got that dark money, that sweet, sweet dark money that's helping. But they are also raising money because people are willing to pay what they are doing now. I think one of the things they'll find, though, is that the energy they have in the Democratic Party that's on the far left, that will maybe help for the far left candidates in the primaries that are to come, right? They have now some younger people that are wanting to take on some of the old guard. And that kind of energy for younger people who know how to use the phones, that can help them win to become the candidate. But I think it will hurt them in the general elections because of the way people have been voting. And we saw that just 8 months ago in 2024. I would also add that the Republicans have all the energy on their side when it comes to the number of young people that voted for Trump. And if they can hold on to that for the next election, then you have young people voting for your party, the Republicans, in 2 elections. That means that just typically in their life, they will probably vote Republican their whole life, driving their parents absolutely crazy.
Let's get them. Let's keep it going. So moderate Democrats, when they see Bernie and AOC out there getting crowds like this, does that make you guys nervous?
No, but it makes me realize that we forget that politics is about addition. It probably would have been better for President Trump to be there and for those people to have been at the UFC. I would have preferred to go to the UFC myself, because at the end of the day, just speaking over and over and over again to the very people who agree with everything that you agree with doesn't necessarily bring you any more voters when it all gets said and done. It would have been interesting to hear Bernie or Mr. Sanders and the Congresswoman from New York say, we believe we should cut taxes and regulations on small businesses. We believe that the first $50,000 of earned income on someone should be tax-free, payroll tax-free. And in fact, President Trump, we agree with you. When you brought and had President Zelensky in the Oval Office with you, and you proposed a rare earth mineral deal, probably the greatest thing our country can do to reduce our reliance on China over the next 20 years and going where that puck is going, what I was trying to say, Judge, is to make it where China, who has threatened us with halting rare earth mineral exports from their country to ours, if we had a deal with Ukraine that stopped Russia and gave us an opportunity to build our economy for the future. That's what politics should be about. And that's what I'm hoping, whether it's Bernie Sanders or whether it's someone else on my party, that's what we should be talking about.
Harold suggested that AOC and Bernie go to a UFC fight, Judge. What do you think that entrance would look like?
You need to run for office. I would go in a minute.
Here is the difference, okay? First of all, you've got two totally different audiences. The UFC audience, you've got a lot of blue-collar, family, working class. You've got everyone is, is family. There's people who love a fight. And the difference, not with each other, you're right. Not with each other, but the difference is the reaction. Donald Trump walks in, and immediately the place explodes. And what do? They start singing and chanting, USA, USA. The man doesn't have to, the president doesn't have to get up, say one word, try to sell a political message. He walks in and bang, 18,000 people are united in supporting him and the United States of America. Now, juxtapose that to what's going on at Coachella. You got an 83-year-old guy trying to talk to Generation Z, a political speech, when half of them are high and they're half dressed. They're trying to, they're paying $700 to $1,500 to get a ticket, $30 for a sandwich. And he's trying to preach to them about how bad it is. He's talking about climate change, racism, capitalism. He's politicizing a music event. If they weren't so stoned, they would have booed him out.
They never really chant USA at Bernie rallies, do they?
Can you imagine President Trump at Coachella doing this? I mean, he'd have a great
the YMCA.
It would eventually break him down.
Yeah, he would.
He would break him down.
Exactly.
He'd get lemonades for everybody. He'd be the greatest lemonade of all time.
President's got to go to Coachella next year.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right.
Up next, Bill Maher breaks bread with Trump while Big Gretch uses a binder to hide from him. Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.